There is a little man over in Russia with a very small you-know-what, and he is trying his best to get past Ukraine. And if he does, there will be an army of Poles ready to fight back.
This is Poland, once the tragic crossroad of European empires.
And I must say, Poland is very central.
It has undergone nothing short of a Western military renaissance in the 21st century and is now becoming one of the most feared armies in Europe. Yep, you heard that right. Poland has become a military beast, and Putin really should think twice before deciding to poke this fully staffed, well-armed, and exceptionally trained bear. The ongoing war in Ukraine has undeniably influenced Poland's military posture. But with the flurry of spending increases, arms deals, and recruitment programs, what exactly is Poland gearing up for?
It's really interesting because actually over the years, the British Army has actually not had as much investment. Hello, Pix. And it's interesting because actually where we are, I don't think we need as strong an army possibly, because we are quite well defended by being on an island for starters. But Poland, throughout its history has had difficult neighbours. So actually, I think this Russian invasion of Ukraine is definitely giving Poland the boost that they realise they get past Ukraine, we have to deal with this. So very wise.
And will it be prepared? After what Poland's been through in recent history, trying to pull off a modern military revival is no joke. Within the span of a single lifetime, the Polish nation waded through shattering, simultaneous military defeats at the hands of both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, a wartime occupation, partitioning, and tragic Holocaust, and its complete absorption into the Warsaw Pact as a Soviet satellite for the 40 years that followed. Talk about trauma. During the latter Cold War period, Poland's population doubled. It maintained a decently large standing army, often joined by Soviet troops stationed within its territory. The Eastern Bloc country, led by unapologetic communist officials closely aligned with Stalin's regime, nevertheless managed to rebuild its devastated cities in the aftermath of World War II, slowly raising the standard of living among its inhabitants. Over time, hardline Stalinists fell from power, followed closely by many ousted Soviet officers who had for decades filled leadership positions throughout the Polish army. The 1970s and 80s ushered in an era of turbulent protests and political change. The rise of Solidarity, a widely popular anti-communist social movement, preceded mass pushback to and the eventual breakdown of Soviet authority in Poland. The Poles wanted freedom and eventually took it. By 1991, the dissolution of the Soviet Union created the conditions for democratic elections, Poland's first since 1920. This landmark moment was to be Poland's first major step in its inexorable civil-military transformation, one that would see the nation progressively look westward for models upon which it could base its rapidly developing economic, military, and political systems.
That is clearly what has happened, and I completely understand. I made a joke at the start about Poland being central, because over here in the UK, I think a lot of people would still call Poland the East. And it's not necessarily the cultural side of things necessarily. I think because we are so far left and so west in the UK, and you forget how big Russia is and how much of Europe it takes up. But it is that thing where now Poland is taking more of an influence now from the west rather than the east. And it's showing progression. It's showing more prosperity. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure it's not there completely. But things are improving because you are taking the signs, the culture of the West rather than the East. It's amazing to see, because I've been going there even for the last 13 years. No, 11 years. And even in that short space of time, I've seen the improvements, in my eyes anyway.
Poland's Western integration scared the pants off enemy soldiers, and on September 18, 1993, Soviet troops left the country for good. Just 5 years later, in 1999, Poland officially joined NATO. 5 years after that, it joined the EU. But Poland trying to come besties with the West is not a new story. Today, many people forget that though Poland was ravaged by the Axis early on in World War II, its armies in exile fled Soviet gulags and went on to fight gallantly as pilots, sailors, and soldiers within the Allied armies abroad.
303
with hundreds
that I've
of
learned
thousands
about.
of Poles voluntarily serving in Italy and on the Eastern Front, they fought with hope that they might someday rebuild Poland from the ashes. A new Poland, one free from the tyranny of coercive foreign regimes. Poland followed this North Star as it cast away the vestiges of Soviet control in the new millennium. Ever since, it has progressively sought to become a self-sufficient, independent power in its own right. Even before it joined the EU, Poland sent 2,000 soldiers to participate in the 2003 invasion of Iraq, then the coalition's fourth largest military contribution behind the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia.
They're certainly choosing their side, right? In general, the Poles are choosing their sides, and it's with what we call the West, i.e., Great Britain, America, Australia, and not that it's in the West, but we call it the West still. So they're choosing their side on what they believe is fair and just. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of corruption, there's a lot of dodginess going on in the UK, definitely in America, definitely in Australia, but it's about being free. Now, yes, you've got the freedom of speech, but you also have the repercussions of your freedom of speech, obviously. But you are able to make your own success, and I think Poland are making the right decision, personally.
Poland maintained its presence in Iraq for years, participating in and even leading Multinational Division Central South, a NATO unit responsible for an entire occupation zone as part of Multinational Force Iraq. Their deployment lasted until 2008, when Polish troops were finally withdrawn from the country, but Iraq was just the beginning. In Afghanistan too, Poland signaled its solidarity with the West. There for the duration of the 20-year forever war,
Wow.
the Poles proved themselves reliable, trustworthy partners, cycling through more than 33,000 personnel in what constituted the largest peacekeeping mission in Poland's military history. We're telling you, you want these guys to be on your side.
We already learnt that about the 303 and the Battle of Britain. The Poles are brilliant fighters. They're determined. They want to fight for their freedom.
But don't take our word for it. Western veterans of these two wars whose tours of duty brought them into contact with their Polish allies almost unanimously praised their martial prowess, professionalism, and battlefield capabilities. Each additional year spent as part of NATO's multinational deployments increased Poland's military effectiveness, interoperability, and trustworthiness. With certain pundits labeling Poland an emergent protégé of the United States in Central and Eastern Europe, the nation has more than demonstrated its unity with other NATO allies, as well as its approval and support of American security policies. Since 1989, each successive Polish government has supported America's forward military presence in Europe, seeing in their ally a source of protection, friendship, and economic prosperity it so desperately lacked throughout its fraught history.
There was one word that was used just now, and that was trustworthy. And you've got to be able to trust your neighbours, the people you're working with. And if you can trust them, then you won't have any problems, We all know you can't trust Russia. You can't trust China, probably. You can't trust North Korea. So if we can band together, this is the whole thing with the UK leaving Europe, or leaving the European Union, should I say. What we've done is we were in a big, what you'd say, maybe a big country that works together to now going off on our own. And I think that's very dangerous. So you need to even more now rely on the trustworthiness of your friends.
Poland has repeatedly been one of few NATO countries willing to fulfill their obligations to spend 2% of their GDP on defense spending, a point of friction between the US and its other NATO allies in recent years. With amicable relations deteriorating between Poland's current right-wing government and President Joe Biden, who won the presidency in 2020, Russia's invasion of Ukraine caused a resurgence in Polish-American relations. Ever since, the two countries have reaffirmed their commitment to each other and to their shared desire to arm Ukraine with the weapons it needs to succeed. Great, everyone's getting along. Now let's get down to business and talk about geostrategy and tanks. The latest landmark decision to finally send main battle tanks to Ukraine has renewed attention on the United States and Germany. In reality, Ukraine owes much of the decision's outcome to Poland, who was one of the first countries to pressure a reticent Berlin into increasing its support for Ukraine by asking for approval to transfer its own German-made Leopard 2 tanks. Talk about heart.
But it's not just tanks and weaponry that Poland have almost forced other countries to do more in. Look at the Ukrainian refugees. Well, Poland have taken how many millions? They have taken a hell of a lot of Ukrainian refugees. And so we're now in a position, well, if they're able to take that many, then why can't we take more? And we pressured our government then, because of how many Poland were taking, into accepting more into our country. So it's not just weapons.
Jeopardizing its own diplomatic relationship with its German neighbor, Poland acted as a catalyst for consensus, eventually deciding to send its Leopards to Ukraine even without explicit German consent. Arguably, this choice helped bring Berlin and the rest of the West into agreement on the issue. It also demonstrated Poland's proactive leadership role as a vocal opponent of Russian aggression, warnings it has been issuing to Europe since it joined the European Union in 2004. Today, Poland is the security linchpin on the NATO alliance's eastern flank. Strategically placed on Russia's westernmost border, its rapid economic modernization and expansion of its armed forces has catapulted it into 20th place in the list of the world's most powerful militaries. During the war in Ukraine, it has accepted more displaced Ukrainian refugees than any other European nation, several million in fact, providing them access to healthcare, education, and employment in the process. Poland also ranks highly in European military aid to Ukraine, surpassing virtually every European nation save their neighbors in the Baltics. To date, they have sent hundreds of tanks, armored vehicles, and small arms to their imperiled neighbor, likewise opening their roadways to an unending stream of international aid flowing into Ukraine in great numbers.
That's true.
What about the rest of the West? Let's just say Europe's old guard have not emerged from the conflict in Ukraine unscathed. Great Britain is no longer a part of the European Union. Germany's initial reluctance to distance itself from Russian trade deals, pipelines, and natural resources, and the French president's dogged belief in the possibility of a negotiated settlement with Putin despite Ukraine's wishes to restore its original borders have seen each country's prestige fall.
I'm sorry, how can you now talk things through with the amount of damage that bloody idiot Putin, that scumbag that he is, how much damage him and his soldiers have done to Ukraine and everything? How can you now talk to the guy? We need to send in the SAS. Let's be honest. Send the SAS in. Let's pretend we don't know who did it and take that man out. He is an absolute nutter. He's an absolute nutter.
Poland has wholeheartedly jumped into this leadership vacuum and is now attempting to warn the wider world about the danger posed by Putin's Russia. In a September 2022 speech, the Polish President Andrzej Duda warned the United States General Assembly that this is not just a regional conflict. Russia's war against Ukraine is a potential source of global conflagration. Yep. This war will affect our countries as well as yours if it hasn't already. This, then, is what Poland is truly afraid of. For decades during the Cold War, it nervously awaited a war between the Soviet bloc and the West, knowing its borders might once again become Europe's bloodlands. Today, the threat remains. Eastern Europe is experiencing its worst conflict since World War II, and from the start, global leaders have warned against any actions that could escalate into a potential World War III scenario. Last November, this was almost what happened.
See, this is what's really frustrating, because I fully appreciate that, with NATO, you have the pact that if one country is attacked, then every other country in NATO will stand by that country and will fight back. And obviously, Ukraine is not a NATO country. And so I appreciate that basically, if everyone joined in, it would be a world war. And I know it's tricky because the risk and fear that everyone has is Putin with all his nuclear weapons that he apparently has. And but I don't think he would use them. You have to be absolutely, well, I say you have to be an absolute lunatic, but he is an absolute lunatic, so you never know. But it's so frustrating, to almost sit back and watch what's happening. And Ukraine, wow, they are fighting their asses off. Considering this, the population of that country compared to Russia, they are holding their ground. They are fighting for their lives and their country. So fair play, but it is so frustrating.
That month, an errant missile crossed over into Polish territory, detonating at an agricultural grain weighing facility, killing 2 people. The event, the war's first strike on territory outside Ukraine, prompted a barrage of coverage.
I was so sure that was going to kick it off. They just said that it was apparently the Ukrainian missile system that deflected the Russian missile, and that's why it wasn't an attack on Poland. But, I could have seen that really, really getting us going. That I thought NATO was going to go, bang, right, you're done for.
Who fired the missile? From where? Why? Everyone knew NATO's famous Article 5 defense clause in the alliance's founding charter meant an attack on one ally was an attack on them all. Prudently, as the world leaders waited for answers, world leaders, none more patient than Poland, collected and weighed the evidence, ultimately deciding the event was likely a misfire, and ultimately not enough to invoke Article 5. It may not have sparked World War III, but the strike did prompt Polish officials to redouble their efforts to prepare for such an eventuality. Several months before, an opinion poll found that 84% of Poles expressed fears that military action could spill over into Polish territory. Poland, much like Ukraine, knows it could never face Russia alone without the material and moral support from the West. Could it? It would be impossible to predict how a conflict between Poland and Russia might unfold, nor how much support Poland might receive from NATO and the West. One thing's for sure, Poland isn't waiting around to find out. In the meantime, it's doing its utmost to deter Russia by arming and equipping its armed forces in a way that gives them the highest probability of military success. Is it overreacting? We really don't think so.
The problem is, you say, is it overreacting? But we just don't know. You just don't know. You don't know what Putin's going to do next, do you? That's the tricky thing. He could be happy with taking Ukraine and that's it. But then he's on your borders. He is right on your borders of the NATO, of Poland. And you just don't know what he's going to do next. Is he going to try and claim more land? The only thing is, hopefully, with that whole Article 5 that they're talking about, if you attack one NATO country, you attack all, and therefore it wouldn't just be moral support or supplying weapons. It would be a full-scale attack with soldiers, tanks, everything. Everyone getting involved, not just moral support. Moral support doesn't really do a lot.
In many respects, Poland now sees Ukraine fulfilling the role it was once destined to fill, the linchpin of European security, the first wall of defense against a Russian bear railing in its unrelenting quest to fulfill its imperialist ambitions. Poland has claimed it will support Ukraine for as long as it takes. The nation's historic antipathy to all things Russian and Russia's blatant disregard for its neighbors' sovereignty has prompted a thorough rededication to its own defense through an impressive military buildup. Poland already arguably possesses Europe's best army, but after the November 2022 missile incident, it looks set to get even stronger. And it means business. Since the start of Russia's invasion, Poland claims it has experienced its highest wave of recruitment since it officially ended conscription back in 2008. In 2022, it recruited more than 13,500 professional soldiers, about 8% of Poland's total armed forces of 164,000. With the recent announcement to astronomically increase its military spending from 2.5 to 4, possibly even 5% of its GDP, it aims to increase its overall force structure to 300,000 professional soldiers. This will not only dwarf Germany's 1.5% of GDP spent on defense, it will see Poland almost double its army of 170,000. It is the type of commitment that shows Poland has already become, in the words of a senior US Army official in Europe, our most important partner in continental Europe. Wait, it gets better. The Polish military renaissance means an even tighter defense alliance with the United States, one of its main weapon suppliers. In 2020, the Polish government reached agreements to purchase HIMARS rocket launchers, F-35 combat aircraft, Patriot air defense systems, MRAPs, and hundreds of M1 Abrams tanks to replace its stockpile of the 240 Soviet tanks it sent to Ukraine. It has announced its intention to eventually incorporate American Black Hawk helicopters made in Poland by Lockheed Martin, other multi-role aircraft, and drones to complement its arsenal of American F-16s already in use among its air forces. This is not all. Poland is also ordering billions of dollars worth of weapons from cheaper South Korean weapons manufacturers, with a $10 to $12 billion order for 180 K2 Black Panther tanks, 200 K9 Thunder howitzers, 48 Fa-50 light attack aircraft, and 218 K2-39 Chunmoo rocket launchers. And that's only the used gear. Poland's appetite for new arms is even bigger, claimed one journalist. Korea will eventually send Poland 1,000 K2 tanks and 600 K9 howitzers in the coming years. It has also purchased Italian Leonardo attack helicopters to be built in Poland. Talk about being prepared for anything.
It's just insane. That's insane. Is it being prepared, or is it being a little bit paranoid? That would be a point I'd make. Is it being scared, paranoid, prepared? It seems like an awful lot, and I appreciate the situation they're in, and it's such a shame that it even comes to this.
What could go wrong?
God.
Well, some do say Poland's unprecedented defense spending will strain its domestic budget to the breaking point, but its neighbors are hardly complaining. They know the more Poland spends, the safer they'll be. Poland is acting on its stated desire to become Central Europe's preeminent military power. Many doubt whether their vision will ever come to fruition. Polish military stocks are still heavily based on Soviet-era surplus after all, but the recent influx of American weapons like the M1A2 Abrams into the country, its diversification to the other foreign weapon markets, and its emphasis on recruiting and training a new generation of dedicated soldiers certainly paint a promising picture that it might. And in the eventuality that Russian aggression spills beyond Ukraine's borders, Europe can be assured that if any country will be ready to fight, Poland will be chief among them. But what do you think? Will Poland eventually find itself in an epic battle with Putin's army?
Who knows? That is the ultimate thing, isn't it? No one knows. Poland are getting prepared for a full-scale war that may never happen. That is the big thing. And so you've got to look at it that is a lot of money that Poland is spending on military equipment when it could be going into Poland itself, the infrastructure, green energy, any form of technology. But it's not, healthcare, but it's not. It's being used for war preparation and the military, which may never even be used. And there's no right or wrong because you just don't know if it's going to be needed or not. But I really, really hope that it's not going to put too much of a strain on the Polish economy the infrastructure, because that would be such a shame. And it is madness because Poland is our line of defense, our first line of defense for Europe, isn't it? And we hope it doesn't happen, but it's scary. It's scary times. It's amazing that we still go to war with each other. We're all the bloody same. We are all the same. We're all human beings, and yet we always feel it necessary to start wars. Throughout history, there's always been war, and we're all the bloody same. Why? It's not good. But thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you are from Poland and you want to see our vlogs, we've been to Poland, we've vlogged in Krakow and Gdansk, then go to Charlie and Rob, or go to charlieandrob.com, our website, where you'll see more. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we will catch you next time.